Donald Trump has done the unthinkable again. After facing criminal charges, multiple lawsuits, and impeachment, he's back in the White House, this time as a convicted felon. It's a historic moment that has never happened before in US history. A former president re-elected while entangled in a web of criminal and civil legal battles. But what does this mean for Trump's ongoing legal cases? And how will his re-election affect his ability to dodge or delay punishment? With a full docket of cases awaiting him, Trump now finds himself in an unprecedented position. The man who once held the highest office in the land is now facing the very real threat of prison time, hefty fines, and more legal scrutiny than any president before him. From the hush money scandal in New York to accusations of election interference in Georgia, Trump is no stranger to legal challenges. Add to that the two major federal cases, one in Washington, D.C. regarding his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and another in Florida over classified documents, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But here's the kicker, Trump's re-election could actually change the game. Will his team continue to delay these cases, or is his legal luck about to run out? Can he use the power of the presidency to escape accountability, or will the courts hold him to account? In this video, we're diving into how Trump's legal battles will unfold now that he's back in power. From criminal convictions to civil suits and everything in between, we'll break down what you need to know about his legal future and how it could reshape the American political landscape. Stay tuned. As Donald Trump enters his second term, his criminal cases remain an ongoing battle, and his re-election could drastically impact how these legal challenges unfold. The most immediate concern is the criminal case in New York, where Trump was convicted earlier this year on 34 counts of falsifying business records. These charges stem from the hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign, a move designed to prevent damaging information from surfacing before the election. Now, Trump is set to be sentenced on November 26, 2024, but his legal team is pulling out all the stops to avoid punishment. They are pushing for the conviction to be overturned, citing a Supreme Court ruling that grants presidents some level of immunity. If the judge decides to move forward with sentencing, Trump could face up to 4 years in prison, though a lighter sentence, such as probation or home confinement, could be an option. The real question is whether the case will be delayed or dismissed entirely, as his lawyers aim to buy more time to challenge the conviction. Trump is also facing significant federal charges in both Washington, D.C. and Florida. In D.C., he's accused of attempting to overturn the 2020 election results, including his involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. The charges against him have been heavily contested, with Trump's legal team arguing that his actions are protected by presidential immunity. The recent Supreme Court decision granting him some degree of immunity complicates the prosecution's case. With Trump now re-elected, he could move to fire special counsel Jack Smith, potentially halting the case altogether and using his power to avoid further legal proceedings. In Florida, Trump faces charges related to the illegal possession of classified documents after leaving the White House. Although a judge initially dismissed the case, prosecutors are appealing the ruling. This case, like the one in D.C., is tied up in legal wrangling and could be delayed or even dismissed if Trump's presidency gives him the leverage to end the investigation. Trump faces charges in Georgia for allegedly attempting to interfere with the state's election results. This case is complicated by legal questions surrounding whether the prosecutor, Fani Willis, can continue her investigation now that Trump is president-elect. If Willis is removed from the case, the charges could be dismissed, but even if she stays, the prosecution may be delayed for years, with Trump's legal team prepared to fight it at every turn. While Donald Trump's criminal cases are grabbing headlines, his civil legal battles are equally intense and could have long-lasting consequences, especially now that he's back in power. From defamation suits to accusations of fraud, Trump is facing a slew of civil cases that are working their way through the courts and could cost him millions, if not more. One of the most high-profile civil cases is the ongoing legal drama with E. Jean Carroll, the writer and former magazine columnist who accused Trump of sexually assaulting her in the 1990s. In 2023 and 2024, two federal juries found Trump liable for defamation after he publicly denied the accusations and accused Carroll of lying. As a result, Trump was ordered to pay substantial damages, $5 million for the first case and $83 million million in the second. Trump's legal team is appealing both verdicts, arguing that the damages are excessive and that his statements were protected by free speech. However, Carroll's legal team is pushing for the full amount to be upheld, potentially leaving Trump on the hook for tens of millions in damages. Beyond the defamation suits, Trump is also battling a civil fraud case brought by the New York Attorney General. In this case, Trump and his company were accused of inflating the value of his assets to secure more favorable loans and insurance rates. A judge found him and his company liable for fraud and imposed a stunning $454 million in damages. This verdict sent shockwaves through the business world, and Trump's legal team is now appealing the ruling, hoping to have the fine reduced or dismissed altogether. In September 2024, a state appeals court heard arguments on this case, and while it seemed receptive to the idea of lowering the fine, the outcome is still uncertain. If the decision is upheld, it could cripple Trump financially, especially given his already high level of debt and ongoing business challenges. Trump is still facing civil lawsuits related to his involvement in the January 6th Capitol attack. Democratic lawmakers and other plaintiffs have filed suits accusing him of inciting the violence that occurred that day. While some of these suits could be tied up in the courts for years, a 1997 Supreme Court ruling allows civil lawsuits to proceed against sitting presidents, meaning that these cases could continue even while Trump is in office. This adds yet another layer of complexity to Trump's already overwhelming legal situation, as his second term may be marred by ongoing litigation that could drain his time, resources, and political capital. As Donald Trump navigates his second term as president-elect, his legal team's strategy is becoming increasingly focused on delay tactics and leveraging his presidential powers to shield him from criminal and civil accountability. Now that he's been re-elected, Trump has more tools at his disposal than ever before, and his attorneys are wasting no time in trying to exploit them. With multiple cases pending, the real question is whether Trump can use his position to slow down or even shut down these proceedings entirely. One of the most significant legal arguments his team is pushing is the idea of presidential immunity. In several of his criminal and civil cases, Trump's lawyers argue that as a sitting president, or even as a president-elect, he should be immune from prosecution. This argument gained new traction following a landmark Supreme Court ruling earlier this year that extended limited immunity to a president in certain legal situations. While the ruling doesn't grant Trump blanket immunity, it does create a powerful opening for his legal team to argue that actions taken while in office, especially those tied to his presidential duties, should be protected from legal scrutiny. If this argument holds, it could throw a wrench in a number of cases, particularly the federal charges related to election interference in Washington, D.C., and the classified documents case in Florida. Trump's legal strategy also hinges on delaying proceedings. His attorneys have been masters of pushing for continuances, extensions, and appeals, hoping to push these cases beyond Election Day and now beyond his second term. The longer these cases are delayed, the more time Trump has to consolidate his power as president and potentially make moves to shut down or dismantle investigations altogether. One of his primary goals in delaying these cases is to stall the federal criminal cases in DC and Florida, where special counsel Jack Smith is handling the investigations. Trump has already hinted that if re-elected, he would fire Smith, potentially ending both cases. The idea of Trump using his power to terminate ongoing investigations is a frightening prospect for those hoping for accountability. In addition to criminal cases, Trump's civil suits are also tied up in legal wrangling. In the E. Jean Carroll defamation cases and the New York fraud case, Trump's team is pushing hard to appeal any unfavorable rulings, arguing for reduced damages and contesting the validity of the claims. These cases, though, are likely to outlast his presidency. While presidents have immunity from certain criminal charges while in office, civil lawsuits are a different matter. The Supreme Court ruled in Clinton versus Jones, 1997, that sitting presidents are not immune from civil suits, and this precedent could come back to haunt Trump, especially if his lawsuits drag on into his second term. His re-election has shifted the landscape of his legal battles, giving him new avenues to pursue as he tries to protect his interests and avoid the full force of justice. But the question remains, will his legal luck run out, or will his power be enough to outlast the courts? Donald Trump's legal challenges are far from over, and his re-election only complicates matters further. From criminal convictions to civil lawsuits, the road ahead for the former president is filled with uncertainty. Whether or not Trump's legal team can successfully delay, dismiss, or even leverage the power of the presidency to avoid accountability remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, his legal battles will continue to shape his legacy and his time in office. For Trump, the stakes couldn't be higher. Every case, whether in New York, Florida, Georgia, or DC carries significant consequences, not just in terms of potential jail time or financial penalties, but for his credibility as a leader, with criminal cases that could land him behind bars, civil lawsuits that could financially cripple him, and ongoing investigations that seem to have no end. Trump's second term could very well be defined by his ability or inability to navigate this legal minefield. Of course, this is all uncharted territory. A president-elect facing criminal convictions and civil suits is unprecedented, and the courts will be grappling with questions about presidential immunity, the limits of executive power, and the role of the judiciary in holding a sitting president accountable. Will Trump's strategy of delay and deflection work, or will the legal system catch up with him? Whatever happens, it's clear that Trump's legal troubles are far from over. His time in office could very well be marked by courtroom battles as much as by policy debates, and the nation will be watching closely. The outcome of these cases may not only determine Trump's future, but also set important precedents for the relationship between the presidency and the law.